He was like the playground legend because he was 5'9", had incredible hops. He could do everything, anything he wanted to. He was better than me, he was better than Jason, he was better than Antonio, he was better than everybody.
You can have all the talent in the world, and in one flush, watch it go down the drain. I stress this to anyone beginning the path I once walked, to not go the way Jason described. Not the prettiest of illustrations painted by the Hall of Fame point guard, but a very real one that foreshadows exactly how fast it can all be taken away from you. Stunted growth isn't to tear down, diminish, or paint athletes in a negative stroke, but to warn those that so desperately need it to arm them in the battle they're about to face, the journey to the highest level of basketball. Tell the truth as you know it, explain by example, and hope it's more guidance than I ever got in my times of need. Today's feature is a playground legend that didn't get that guidance either. Because of the following reasons, in my opinion, he never made it to the level some of his lesser talented peers did. Demetrius "Hook" Mitchell, also known as Wale Abdul-Rahim, born September 10th, 1968. It's your boy JC Stunted Growth. Ash, get it, man. Stunt number 1, doomed from the start. Lack of the right guiding force while trying to make it to the NBA is probably the biggest growth stunt in the careers of the talented that never made it. Hook Mitchell is from Oakland, California. It's no secret he grew up in poverty without much to his name. As a youngster, he'd witnessed his mother gradually become a victim to the drug game that ran rampant through Oakland in the 70s and 80s. From the jump, he was faced with the fact he'd have to tread the water of success alone without a map to guide his journey. His mother and father, both victims of drug use and both in and out of the prison system, with his father spending over 30 years incarcerated, weren't equipped to help a young Hook find an easier way to navigate that path. He would go on to be raised primarily by his grandparents, with the drug and crime-infested community playing the role of close relative. But only this relative doesn't care about your future, your goals, your body, or you becoming the person everyone thinks you're capable of becoming. This relative simply wants to use and use and use until you are no more. By 10 years old, he was already introduced to cocaine and marijuana, and most times by his own close family. Ones that loved him, but in the only way they knew how, providing drugs and encouraging him to disregard responsibilities like school and staying away from the streets, building unnecessary characteristics. He would sleep on the streets wherever he could find a floor to lay his head, and most times it was at Gary Payton's house, who lived with his father and mother, that instilled discipline and was able to give Gary the structure Hook so desperately needed. This lack of those things would cause Mitchell to neglect his schoolwork and fall so far behind academically that he didn't come close to qualifying for a scholarship leaving high school. The very first thing you need in your bag to continue your basketball journey more seriously, especially in those days. Not able to do that stunted Hook's growth the worst because it sent him down a path he'd never return from. Stunt number 2, drug abuse. The second biggest and most told stunt in Hook's career came because of the unfortunate whirlwind of drug use he was caught up in. Due to his street upbringing, Mitchell became friends with a lot of street guys in his neighborhood that normally had most of his friends like Antonio Davis and Gary Payton shook to be around. The same friends and associates that supplied him with uncountable amounts of gym shoes along with all the drugs he could ever want. In fact, for each dunk he made in the game in high school, they'd give him a gram of cocaine. These drugs made school unnecessary in Hook's mind and caused him to miss on opportunities like going to college and furthering his career as he watched his peers Jason Kidd and Gary Payton and Antonio Davis did. Later on, Hook did attend a junior college in his area where the coach had to falsify his documents to make it look like he at least graduated high school, something in which he never did. Hook would initially do well at this junior college until his brother, as he called him, Larry Parker, died and sent Mitchell into a serious drug binge that jeopardized any chance he had at furthering his growth at a Division I school. From drinking alcohol with breakfast to doing lines at halftime of his basketball games, Hook Mitchell was clearly off the path he needed to be. With all his time and money going to being active in using, basketball slipped further away from reality for him. His drug abuse led him to being arrested at 16 for selling marijuana. This would lead to the rest of his life in and out of prison, further crushing his chances of ever making it to the league. I was never as good as I could have been because drugs hindered my performance, my mental state, as well as my approach to being the player I could have been. A profound quote from Hook Mitchell himself. Stunt number 3, lost talent. As far as on the basketball court, not much people ever question Hook Mitchell's ability. The rest of the people haven't really seen much of him to be able to judge. The one fact about his story is that the outer-worldly talent he once possessed is now lost forever, never getting to see the light of day and reach its full potential. He played 1 season at Merritt College and 2 at Contra Costa College, but for the most part, this was a far cry from the things and places he could have done and been had it not been for the reasons mentioned above. In 1999, he would be arrested for an armed robbery of a Blockbuster store in which he did the next 5 years of his life in prison for. It was the final opportunity for Hook to ever have a chance at becoming a professional basketball player. It was also the day this once amazing talent lost its way forever. He would convert to Islam and change his name in prison to Wale Abdul Rahim. All in all, Hook Mitchell's story will go down as one of the more sadder of the Stunted Growth features you'll ever hear, because this guy was one that really didn't have a shot from the beginning. From being born into poverty, a parentless home, to the era of drug-infested communities, lack of any real guidance and direction, and no real self-motivation or drive, you can't help but empathize with his journey. Also, you can't help but use this as a reminder that talent is only the first ingredient to success in the game. Find out the others relative to your era by watching the guys doing it now and follow those footsteps made for you. Some are able to blaze their own path, and that's a beautiful thing. Stay focused, stay busy, stay working, and it'll all work out. Salute to Hook Mitchell. Hopefully wherever he is, he's doing well, and may he be able to capitalize off his street success one day if he haven't already. It's your boy JC, stuntedgrowth3.com, and I'm out.